Live from the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador. This is From the South, and I'm Steiny Gray, extending a very special welcome to our viewers in Antigua and Barbuda. We start in Venezuela, where a three-day event in solidarity with the Bolivarian Revolution is into its final sessions. Over 300 participants from 95 countries are taking part in the event called We Are All Venezuela. Let's go to our correspondent, Freddie Gillingham, who is there. Hello, Freddie. So what's happening on the last day of the Solidarity Gathering?
Folks, welcome back to the Teresa Carreño Theatre in downtown Caracas. It is, of course, the second official day of this large international solidarity event for Venezuela. Various events happening throughout the day, open discussions on various topics and issues relating to the current situation in Venezuela, of course, in the context of the international community. We were at a forum earlier this morning, that was focusing on the presidential elections of this year. They have of course been pushed back to May 20th. We have with me now to talk about the presidential elections, world affairs analyst and a well-accomplished journalist from both Western and non-Western media outlets, Javier Farque. Thanks for joining us, Javier. I'll just start by asking you a bit about the opposition. We know that there are certain parts of that opposition within the Democratic Unity Roundtable who are saying that they won't recognize the results of this election in May 20th because they're boycotting. Why are they doing that?
Because they don't have a coherent plan about what to do in relation to what's going on in Venezuela. We mustn't forget, when the regional elections in October last year, of which I was an observer, they decided to take part. When they lost, they blamed the government of fraud, and they never showed any proof anyway. So they're quite confused about what to do. There's some people within the opposition who want to take part in the process, like Henry Falconi, the former governor of Lara State, who lost against the Chavez candidate, but other people who don't want to be part of it. And they have a bit of a problem, because if some people from the opposition decide to choose a candidate, what is the rest of the opposition who have decided to boycott going to do about that? Sure. Are they going to boycott their own candidate? They have a bit of a problem. They're in a pickle at the moment. And that is exactly one of the problems that the opposition has. And even many media organizations, international media organizations that support the opposition, are starting to lose their patience, because there's no coherence about the way the opposition behaves. They accept to take part in the electoral process, and when they lose, they accuse the government of fraud. So for as long as they behave in such a way, for as long as they don't have a coherent plan, not only electoral plan, but also an economic plan to help Venezuela to get out of the crisis, people will not trust them and will continue, not believing that they are the right choice for the Venezuelan people.
One of the major things that's been swirling around, particularly in the Western media at the moment, is this so-called threat of a military intervention. Yes. That was, of course, something that Donald Trump said several months ago, and it's been echoed and amplified by Western media. What's the reality of that threat? Is that just clickbait, or is that real?
Well, there's two things here. First of all, we never know with Trump. He's very unpredictable. He's capable of starting a war tomorrow and signing a peace treaty the following day. We never know with him. Could be an empty threat, but if it's concrete, we know that the CIA has been helping, and there was a conference in Texas not long ago where the head of the CIA explained very clearly that they were helping to change things in Venezuela. So there is already an involvement of the Americans, and as we know, they are very linked to the opposition at the moment. The military option is a big problem for the opposition and for those regional countries in the region who support the opposition. Why? Because it would be unacceptable for anyone to accept an invasion, a military invasion of a Latin American countries, going back to the bad old times.
Sure.
Last time was Noriega in the 1980s in Panama. So that's a problem for them, because although they attack Maduro and they criticize Maduro, they would find it very difficult to support a military intervention in Venezuela. But second, this is very important, I was in Lara State last year, and we had a chance to talk to the general in charge of the security for the...
Sure.
And there's a contingency plan within the armed forces of Venezuela who are prepared for an invasion.
Yeah.
they would find such resistance that they would realize that they would have made a big, big mistake. There could be a Latin American Vietnam for the Americans. So the threat could be just the typical bullying attitude of Trump, but you must never rule it out because the Americans have many different ways to intervene in Latin America, particular case in Venezuela. But for those critical, those who attack Maduro, because to be seen as if they are endorsing a military invasion of a Latin American country would be really, really, really bad.
It would be big, it would be big. Thank you, Javier, for talking with us on Telesur English. We are going to be at this event, going to various different forums throughout the day. We are expecting to see President Nicolas Maduro swing by later. We'll bring you more updates of that later on. Thanks for watching.
International community, particularly the progressive countries that are gathered around here, by the way, to support the Venezuelan Bolivarian Revolution. And we expect to overcome these threats because, for instance, military invasion of Venezuela would be, even with the support of Colombia, who is eager to penetrate Venezuelan territory, would be too costly, too costly.
And representatives of social movements in the Caribbean have a strong presence at the Solidarity Summit in Caracas. Let's hear some of their voices.
Different countries, a lot of people with different mindsets, a lot of different programs. So we could see how we can try to help out Venezuela and give support to them.
You said you were studying in Venezuela before? What were you doing here?
Well, I studied health and physical activities in the Cojedes state.
And you've taken your skills back to your home country, I presume?
Yes, I've taken it back, and I give thanks to Venezuela. I give thanks to the Venezuelan Prime Minister or Venezuelan President for his support towards the Caribbean countries and also to Dominica.
We're here to celebrate with the people and to commemorate the death of the anniversary, 5th anniversary of Hugo Chavez. And we stand in solidarity with the revolution.
We're here today to show solidarity with Venezuela, because I believe that every country has a right to govern in its own capacity without the outside interference of other countries, because we see that in the past that the intervention of other countries, especially the bigger nations, with brute force and fascism has caused world wars.
All across the region, countries continue to commemorate the 5th anniversary of the death of Hugo Chavez. This is what Nicaragua is doing to remember the Venezuelan revolutionary leader.
Since Tuesday, from Bolivar to Chavez Avenues, as well as other places in the capital like the National Palace, supporters of Hugo Chavez gathered to honor his memories and thoughts.
We celebrate life because Chavez is born every day in Nicaragua's and in Latin America's youth. In this coordinators meeting, we reaffirm our love for Chavez, for Venezuela, and our compromise to advance towards prosperity in 2018, with higher quality for education. But apart from that, we do this to learn and to progress.
In the Technical Industrial Center, named after him, more than 3,000 youngsters have scholarships supported by ALBA. They homage Chavez with music and color. Melina is one of them. She will graduate in design, cut and confection along with 23 other people.
I wasn't able to get to know him in person, but I'm getting to know him now with all of these programs and scholarships. Here in Nicaragua, I've been able to use many different scholarships, and that has helped me a lot because I now have a job in spite of being a student. I also work as a seamstress and designer in my own workshop.
Orlando Núñez is a sociologist, and he tells us that Chavez was a great leader who achieved union of Latin American countries.
Concretamente en América Latina, I will say that he was the first leader who worked as a bridge between the Caribbean, Central America, and South America.
El Caribe, Centroamérica y Sudamérica.
Nicaragua joined ALBA in 2007, and since then they strengthened bilateral relations with Venezuela. Chavez visited this country many times, and his legacy is everywhere.
The National Electoral Council of Venezuela, or the CNE, has confirmed that 5 candidates will run for the presidency in the upcoming election scheduled for May 20th. One of the members of the CNE, Socorro Hernandez, said the candidates are Nicolas Maduro, Rinaldo Quijada, Javier Bertucci, Alejandro Ratti, and Henry Falcon. Falcon is the main opposition candidate running against President Maduro. Last week, the candidates agreed to respect the results of the elections. We'll take a short break now, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting.
Making incredible progress. The women's unemployment rate hit the lowest level that it's been in 17 years.
Women are doing great? For real? For real? Let's talk about the job situation in your country, President Trump. In the United States, the following professions are at least 80% female: teachers, nurses, secretaries, and healthcare. These female-dominated professions are essential, but not well-paid or high status. Women dominating lower-paid jobs is a huge problem because it leaves many in a tough financial position. Equal workload should mean equal payment, but in real life, that's not the case. Studies show that in the US, women only earn as much as men if they are a dental hygienist, HR specialist, or advertising salesperson. A lot of career options, right? Trump thinks it's fine though, because as long as this capitalist patriarchal system is in the run, women, the LGBT community, and people of color will keep on being exploited and affected by it.
Welcome back. The medical staff in charge of Colombian presidential candidate Rodrigo Londoño say his health has deteriorated since he was admitted to hospital last week. The former FARC leader, also known as Timochenko, had a heart attack last Thursday. He was scheduled to undergo surgery, and doctors are trying to control Londoño's pulmonary and vascular complications. And on March 11th, the Colombians will choose their senators and lawmakers for the next 4 years. But political analysts are warning that the country faces many challenges.
The head of the mission for electoral observation, Alejandra Barrios, said the new Congress will face a huge task to maintain the agreements achieved through the peace process and to push for reforms of the judicial system.
We are talking about a big political reform that will allow the democratization of the country, a reform of the justice system to break the circle of impunity among political groups and those who have the responsibility to make justice.
Will the new Colombian Congress be able to face these challenges? Many are skeptical. Political researchers and activists point out that around 60 candidates are under investigation for corruption or other related felonies. The chances of them being elected are high.
All the 48 lawmakers seriously linked with corruption are going to be elected, according to the data we have, or they will choose their sons or cousins.
At least 40% of Congress will be in the hands of corruption, mobs, or sectors opposed to any kind of reform towards peace. This could bring disastrous effects for Colombia.
What does this mean? That the reforms designed to end corruption or give land to the people are meant to fail.
The Electoral Observation Mission says there are 170 Colombian municipalities that risk fraud or violence. However, it is also concerned about the political dogma in the electoral process.
Perhaps one of the bigger risks in this electoral campaign is the general intolerance. Citizens are not able to express themselves despite their different ideas and point of view.
This complex scenario is proven by the absence of guarantees for the political participation of alternative and progressive forces. Next Sunday, Colombians will have to decide if they want to play the game of democracy and inclusion or choose the nepotism and the corruption of traditional politics.
11 countries will sign the new Trans-Pacific Trade Agreement, or the CPTPP, in the Chilean capital Santiago on Thursday. The deal is set to slash tariffs among member nations by 2019. The pact impacts 500 million people and represents 30% of the world's gross domestic product. The United States withdrew from the trade pact, claiming it would hurt their companies and take jobs away. This will be Chilean President Michelle Bachelet's last public and international event before leaving office on Sunday. And Mexico is looking into ways to deepen energy cooperation with Jamaica, Mexico's foreign minister said in Kingston on Thursday. Luis Videgaray, who is on a two-day trip to the Caribbean island, added that he was hoping to get more Mexican firms to come to Jamaica as potential investors. He also said Mexico would be signing a memorandum of understanding with Jamaica to provide technical support for the island's oil refinery, Petrojam, which is jointly owned by a subsidiary of Petróleos de Venezuela S.A., PDVSA. In Antigua and Barbuda, the leader of the Barbuda People's Movement, Trevor Walker, is filing an injunction against the Antigua and Barbuda Electoral Commission. He wants them to stop voting at a polling station in Antigua as opposed to doing it in the constituency of Barbuda. Residents of Barbuda were evacuated from the island after Hurricane Irma hit in September last year. A few hundred residents have returned. Walker argues there are no special circumstances that prevent Barbudans from voting in Barbuda. The Electoral Commission fired back, saying the court has no jurisdiction in the case because the court can only hear matters dealing with the results of an election. The case resumes on Thursday and elections take place on March 21st.
And so on, because right now what has happened is...
And in Trinidad and Tobago, a new children's court has opened. The court is a subdivision of the Family and Children's Division of the High Court and will adopt a rehabilitative approach to children who have come into conflict with the law. The Chief Justice of Trinidad and Tobago, Ivor Archie, explained the vision behind the new court.
We had a system that punished rather than reformed. We had a system that criminalized those who were really in need of care and social assistance. And I think, very importantly, we had a system that kept our children far longer than could be reasonably justified waiting for justice.
Salvador Zuniga, the husband of the late Honduran indigenous activist Bertha Cáceres, has accused the state of covering for those guilty of her murder 2 years ago. Zuniga said an independent investigation found that authorities have refused to issue arrest warrants against the suspects despite growing evidence over the weekend. Now, police have arrested and charged the executive president of Desarrollos Energéticos for conspiracy to murder. He is the 9th arrest made in connection with the killing. 24 Latin American and Caribbean countries signed the legally binding the Escazú Agreement in Santa Jose, Costa Rica, to protect environmental activists from threats and acts of violence. The countries vowed to guarantee safety for activists and to prosecute any acts of violence against them so they can pursue their activities without fear. The agreement also focuses on granting and protecting access to environmental information. Pope Francis has approved a miracle attributed to Salvadorian Archbishop Oscar Romero, clearing the way for him to be made a saint. Romero was gunned down by right-wing death squads during El Salvador's military dictatorship in 1980. Pope Francis declared him a martyr in 2015 and unblocked his sainthood case, setting him on the path to canonization. Romero was Archbishop of San Salvador at the start of El Salvador's 1979 to 1992 civil war and preached against suppression by government forces. And the president of El Salvador has welcomed the news. Salvador Sanchez Seren tweeted, "The Vatican's announcement of the coming canonization of Monsignor Romero fills us with immense joy." As International Women's Day approaches, dozens of Venus signs have been installed in a park in Mexico City as a symbol of the victims of femicide in the country. The Venus signs are made to look like headstones in a cemetery, representing the growing number of women murdered. Organizers hope the installation pressures the Mexican government to act on reports of violence. Homicides of women have risen by nearly a quarter under President Enrique Peña Nieto, especially as Mexico's total murder tally has recently reached its highest levels. Time now for a short break, but join us again after this look at what our multimedia colleagues are reporting. Welcome back. Russian Foreign Ministry has said that Britain's attempt to link them to the mysterious illness of a double agent is inappropriate. The ministry also said the accusation could damage relations between London and Moscow. Former Russian double agent Sergei Skripal and his daughter fell critically ill when they were possibly exposed to an unknown substance in southern England on Sunday. Israeli forces fired tear gas at women marching at the Kalandia checkpoint in Palestine. Dozens of Palestinian women came together on the eve of Women's Day to emphasize their role in the fight for the Palestinian cause. Israeli forces fired several rounds of tear gas to disperse the non-violent demonstrators. The march was organized by the General Union of Palestinian Women and the National Movement of Palestine. Now let's have a look at some other stories making headlines from around the world.
A state of emergency has been declared in Sri Lanka for 7 days following violent clashes between the majority Buddhist community and Muslims. Tension have been escalating between the two sides over the past year, with some Buddhists accusing Muslims of forcefully converting people to Islam and vandalizing Buddhist archaeological sites. So far, violence has been centered around Kandy, located in the country's central province. This is the first major instance of communal tension in Sri Lanka, the civil war in 2009.
Not only do I condemn the violence, I have also instructed the police to take maximum action against individuals, organizations, and or groups involved in those violent acts.
At least 21 migrants are feared drowned off Libya after a failed attempt to reach Italy. According to survivors, over 100 migrants were sailing on a small wooden boat and a rubber dinghy. The accident happened when people started panicking in one of the boats and fell aboard. 72 migrants were saved by a European rescue organization. The UN says more than 400 people had died this year trying to sail to Italy to seek refuge. The US State Department has confirmed the half-brother of North Korean leader Kim Jong-nam was killed with VX nerve agent. Kim was attacked by two women at Kuala Lumpur's International Airport in Malaysia last year who smeared the toxic on Kim's face. The women told police they thought it was just a prank for a reality television show. VX nerve agent is an extremely toxic substance originally developed for military use.
And finally, hundreds of fishermen in the coastal town of Huangqi in eastern China are celebrating the festival of the ocean gods. In the century-old ritual, they march with decorated palanquins dressed in traditional costumes, chanting prayers, asking for abundant catches for the next year. They also pray for their safety at sea. Well, that brings us to the end of this news brief. For these and many other stories, you can find them on our website at telustv.net/English. And join us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. For Tell Us Your English, I'm Sweeney Gray, and thank you so much for watching. And a very special thank you to our new viewers in Antigua and Barbuda.